Okay, and make sure that we are online. It appears that we are online. Okay, and make sure that we are online. Okay, it's working. Let's get started. All right. And today is a very special day on the Vaishnava, in the Vaishnava calendar. It's the commemoration of the disappearance day of Srila Rupa Goswami, disappearance day of Gauri Das Pandit. There's also part of the Julian Yatra, which culminates on Balaram's appearance day, which is the day after tomorrow, at least here in North Carolina. So because it's the disappearance day of these two great personalities, whom we're going to speak about, I'm going to chant the prayers to the departed Vaishnavas. Karuna Prachu Yanino Prematana Karuna Prachu Hey no Prabhu Kutakela Charya Prabhu Gupta Gila Jaya Thakur Kamura Sarupa Dahazanata Kakada Suranguna Bhavutita Kakada Suranguna Bhavutita Kamura Matayuga Kapakavira Kamura Matayuga Kapakavira Ekakare Gota Gela Gora Natura Ekakare Gota Gela Gora Natura Ashane Mata Ganga go there, ne go takile. Says a buzz and a sangue, ye coilo vela. Says a buzz and a sangue, ye coilo vela. Se sangana pai a kande narotauta. Se sangana pai a kande narotauta. Jayani Prematana Corona Pracho Yeanilo Prematana Corona Pracho Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Wibo, Bo, Hari, Mo, Hari, Bo. Jai Om Vishnu Pad, Paramahansa Paradvikacharya, also tell us at the Shimad. His Divine Grace Sabaya Chalanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Friend Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Garadha Shivasri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Sayamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturam Ki Jai Jagadasami Ki Jai Madhumai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasa Devi Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Gaur Purimananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namah Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Purle Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Dinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachari Nivashesha Sundarbadi Paschati Desh. We're going to read the translation to this prayer by Narottamadas Thakur, which is read on the disappearance days of all great personalities, according to Srila Prabhupada. He brought the treasure of divine love and was filled with compassion and mercy, where is such a personality as Srinivasacharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where am I, Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishna's Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all these devotees, and whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottama Das simply weeps. So today, as I mentioned before, is the commemoration of the disappearance days of Gauridas Pandit and also Srila Rupa Goswami. So I'm going to just mention Gauridas Pandit briefly, and then we'll talk about Rupa Goswami. So Omagana Timidandasha Gananjana Shalaya Chakshur Medita Yena Tesmai Shigurve Namaha. Gauridas Pandit is famous as the appearance of the coward boy Subal, in Krishna's pastimes, and he incarnated as Gauridas Pandit to actually give association and take part in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. And so there's some very interesting stories about Gauridas Pandit. He had a brother, Sakala, and forgive me if I didn't pronounce that name properly, but that brother was the father of the two wives of Lord Nityananda, Vasudha Janava, and Sarakela. So, and then, what else about Gauridas Pandit? Oh yeah, Gauridas Pandit was a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda. So one time, Gauridas Pandit had a visit from Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda in his place of Ambika Kalna. And when they visited him, he refused to let them go. And so he said, "You're not going." And they said, "Well, you could make some deities in our image." And so they basically posed. I'm not sure that they just stood still the whole time deities were made, but somehow or other they arranged the deities of Shishi Gaurnatai, I need my glasses, deities of Gaurnatai were given to Gauridas Pandit. And Gauridas Pandit had a famous disciple named Hridayananda means blissful heart. And this disciple later on became known as Hridaya Chaitanya, and the reason he became known as Hridaya Chaitanya is that once upon a time Gauridas Pandit left the care of the deities in the hands of Hridayananda. So he left the deities in the care, and it came time for Gaur Purnima, and Hridayananda invited all the Vaishnavas to Gaur Purnima without consulting his guru, because the guru wasn't there. He's just trying to serve his guru. Guru comes back, Gauridas Pandit comes back, discovers what his disciple has done, gets angry, banishes his disciple, but what he doesn't realize is that when he banished his disciple, the deities followed his disciple, Hridayananda, and when he got ready to open the curtains on the deity room, he discovered Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were not there. So he got really angry, and he had a stick, and he was running after the deities and after his disciple, because he understood that deities had gone to join his disciple. So he's running, and when he got to where the deities were and his disciple was, the deities got so frightened that they jumped into the heart of the disciple. Therefore, the disciple's name after that point was Hridaya Chaitanya. That means Chaitanya who is in the heart. It's a very famous story. And so, anyway, that's Gauridas Pandit, a great devotee and intimate associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's more information about him on the internet and in various books, and we don't really have the time to talk too much about him tonight, because we're going to talk primarily about Srila Rupa Goswami. And the reason we're going to talk primarily about Srila Rupa Goswami is that Srila Rupa Goswami is our Samstapaka Acharya. So, what is the word? Samstapaka. Basically, one who establishes, or as Prabhupada would sometimes translate that particular word. He would translate it as founder Acharya. Okay. So Srila Rupa Goswami is the founder Acharya, in one sense, of our branch of disciplic succession coming after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Although Sanatana Goswami is elder, but Rupa Goswami is considered the Acharya, the main Acharya, and in fact we are called Rupa Nugas. Rupa Nugas means those who follow in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. Raganuga. Raganuga, like Raganuga Bhakti. Those who follow the Rag, the great attachment. So we are following Srila Rupa Goswami. And what does it mean we are following Srila Rupa Goswami? It means that Srila Rupa Goswami has written the law book for our activities. And what is that law book? That law book is the Bhakti Rasam with the Sindhu, or the nectarian ocean of devotional service. Bhakti Rasa Amrita, of the nectar of devotional service, or as Prabhupada translates it, nectar of devotion. And this nectar of devotion, which we studied in previous online classes about 2 years ago, basically. Not quite 2 years, about a year and a half ago, we finished it up. This nectar of devotion details, let's see, talking about the different waves in the nectar of devotion. The nectar of devotion details sadhana bhakti. It details the higher stage of sadhana bhakti, which is known as Raganuga bhakti. Of course, the lower stage is known as Vaidhi bhakti. It details bhava bhakti, devotional service and ecstasy, talking about the different bhavas, and then finally details devotional service in prema, or love of Godhead. So these four divisions. And in the first division, there's descriptions about things you should do, things you shouldn't do, offenses to be avoided, etc., like that. Most important activities, like worshiping Tulsi, living in a holy place, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Sankirtan, taking shelter of a devotee. So all these things are listed in the beginning of the qualities of, later on you get to the qualities of Krishna. Of course, in the beginning you have the qualities of pure devotional service. Immediate relief from all distress, right? It brings auspiciousness, etc. There's these 6 qualities. Anyways, all the way to Krishna Prema, and the description of the different rasas, and the last part of the nectar of devotion is a description of conflicting rasas, or mixture of different rasas, etc. So that's like our law book. We follow that as a guide to our process of bhakti yoga. It's a fact. And of course, we do other things like preach Krishna consciousness. We have to be practical and manage different things. So, but basically these are the principles of bhakti yoga. It's the guidebook, the law book for bhakti yoga. And then Rupa Goswami's later book, and we're going to talk about some of his other books in this class if we get a chance. It's called the Ujjala Nilamani. Ujjala Nilamani details basically the pastimes in Braj, the intimate pastimes, especially the pastimes between Radha and Krishna and the other gopis. So it's a very advanced literature, and one has to perfect a study of the nectar of devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, before one goes to Ujjala Nilamani. And there's many other advanced books written by other acharyas, like the Govinda Lilamrita, written by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. But one has to study a Nectar of Devotion, what to do, what not to do, and one has to study Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the basic philosophy, and there is some abhideya in Bhagavad Gita and some prayojana in Bhagavad Gita. But the basic delineation of step-by-step procedure of devotional service is contained in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Therefore, Rupa Goswami is known as the Samstapaka Acharya, or we are known as Rupanugas. Okay. And as far as his other books, let's wait until we talk about his biography. Some of the information I'm going to be giving now will be a repeat of what I spoke about this morning in Bhagavatam class. So those of you who are in Bhagavatam class, you can bear with me and try to give a little variety in this regard. So here's Rupa Goswami's biography. So, wait a second, let me set up everything. So, whoops. Oh yeah, okay. Alright. So I have to set up everything so I can see the chat window. Okay. So, so Rupa Goswami parents, the names were Kumaradev and Revati Devi, and they had 6 children. 5 of the children were sons, and 3 of the children were pure devotees. And those 3 were Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and Vallabha. Of course, Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami were known as Amara and Santosh. Rupa was Amara and Sanatana was Santosh. And Rupa, the name Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, those names were given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when they took initiation. So, and they had other names too, but those names were given by the Nawab Hussain Shah. Now this is a very interesting thing. This Nawab Hussain Shah, he was the emperor of Gauda, which means like Bengal at that particular time. And he was extremely cruel. He was a Mughal. And he would torture, without any warning, he would torture Hindus or torture anybody who opposed his rule. And so he got what he wanted. And so he was able to employ Sanatana Rupa, who were known as Dabir Kas and Shakara Malik, which meant private secretary and revenue officer, by threatening them. He told them that unless you work for me, because you're very intelligent. The Bengalis were known as very, very intelligent, still are. They're not fighters, physically strong, but they are extremely intelligent and philosophical. In all of India, they're known as the most intelligent, philosophical people. So, I mean, each and every area of India, there's certain specialties. Like in Punjab, they're very strong. That's why many people in the Indian Army are Punjabis. So anyway, so what happened is that they were employed, W. Cost meaning private secretary, Sakara Malik meaning revenue officer. The interesting thing about Nawab Hussain Shah, and I didn't mention this morning, in many of the histories, he's mentioned, maybe even in the Gaurav Nadeshika, he's mentioned as incarnation of Jarasandha. Now, some of you may remember Jarasandha. Jarasandha was the demon that was killed by Bhimsen, who was joined in 2 parts by this witch named Jara. He was born in 2 parts. He was joined by the witch. Anyway, and so he took birth as Nawab Hussain Shah, and of course, all these demons. The Kamsa appeared as a Aurangzeb, the Hindu-hating emperor, later on. So, I guess these demons, they just maintain their animosity birth after birth, and Krishna's engaging them in his service. I guess Krishna needs demons like that. So, because Rupa and Sanatan, Davirakasa, Shakara, Malik were working for the emperor, they became extremely wealthy. But they never forgot their Krishna consciousness. This means that they were Nitya Siddha devotees. Nitya Siddha means eternally, life after life, and of course Rupa Goswami in the spiritual world is Rupa Manjari. A Manjari is a pre-pubescent young girl who helps Radha and Krishna directly in their interactions, in their intimate interactions. So, and it's probably one of the principal, he is one of the principal Manjaris. And so we all serve under him, under Rupa Manjari, Srila Rupa Manjari, or Shri Rupa Manjari. And one of the songs that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur appreciated the most was Shri Rupa Manjari Pada. That means the lotus feet of Rupa Manjari. So this is, I believe they were singing it to him when he was leaving this material world. Very, very elevated song. And generally we don't sing it in the temple because it's a very elevated song. So anyway, so they never forgot Krishna, even though they had to work for the Nawab Hussain Shah. And even Rupa Goswami had written books. Even before he met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa Goswami had written some books on Krishna consciousness. And one of the most famous books he wrote was called the Hansa Duta, which means the Swan Messenger, which elaborates on some of the deepest aspects of the Krishna conscious philosophy and practice and rasa. So, and they used to read Srimad Bhagavatam every day, and they were in complete ecstasy. So, what happened is that they decided to move to Ramakeli, which I believe was the capital of this particular juncture of Bengal, or at least that's where they were. And Ramkeli is a very famous place. Why? Because they met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu there. But before they met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, both Rupa and Sanatana Goswami constructed a replica of Vrindavan. And they used to call it Gupta Vrindavan. Gupta means like hidden or unknown. Sometimes Mayapur is called Gupta Vrindavan. It's interesting because it's not known to everybody that Mayapur and Vrindavan are non-different. So this Gupta Vrindavan was complete with many bathing places, and they would have scriptural reading and everything like that. And Rupa and Sanatana Goswami became very expert, not only in the Bhakti Shastras, but they became very expert in different languages that were spoken at that time, spoken or written. They even were able to read and write in Arabic, Persian, and of course Sanskrit too, and what to speak of Bengali, obviously. That was their native language. So, and they studied Sanskrit under Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's brother, who was known as Sarvananda Vidyavachaspati. They became very, very expert in all sorts of philosophies. And of course they studied the Quran, and they were able... This was helpful because their mission later on, given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was Nana Shastra Vichara Naikini Vinosa Dharma Samstapako, which we've been reciting every morning as we've been reading not every morning, but every evening, but morning for some of you, as we've been reading the Nectar of Instruction, which is also written by Srila Rupa Goswami. Nana Shastra Vichara Naikini Vino. The six Goswamis peruse many of the different Shastras with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles. So, setting the scene there in Ramakeli, then in 1514, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to go to Vrindavan. And he was accompanied by thousands and thousands of followers who were chanting and dancing with him. But actually his intention was to meet Dabir Khas and Shakara Malik, Rupa and Sanatan. And the two brothers decided to go and meet him in the middle of the night so that they would remain unnoticed. The reason they decided to do that is because they were worried about the Nawab Hussain Shah, who might attack Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, at that time, there's a story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that the Nawab Hussain Shah was advised by one of his advisors, who happened to be a devotee, that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was just harmless, but Nawab Hussain Shah actually was thinking, well, he may be an incarnation of God, something like that. But he didn't intend on hurting Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. However, I think it was Keshava Patri, was very worried because he knew the Nawab Hussain Shah's mind could be turned at a moment's notice, and actually he could be inimical to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he could try to hurt Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what happened is that Rupa and Sanatana Goswami went to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the middle of the night, and when they went to meet him, they first met Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur, and they took the two brothers to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Actually, practically speaking, there were three brothers, and Upama was also there. So the brothers put bunches of straw in their teeth, because that's a tradition when you're bowing down to someone, you're showing your humility. I mean, we don't have to do that. And they bowed down at Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet, and they were so happy to see him. They started to glorify the Lord, and they said that basically we are so sinful, we are more sinful than Jagai and Madai. The reason they said they were more sinful than Jagai and Madai is that Jagai and Madai, in spite of doing all those abominable activities, they had never associated with malechas. Anyway, they acted like malechas. This was their humility. Obviously, they weren't more sinful than Jagai and Madai. But they were assisting the Nawab Hussain Shah, who was conducting nefarious or doing nefarious things. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to them, from now on, your names, he initiated them immediately. Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, he said, please abandon your humility. My heart is breaking to see you so humble. And so Lord Chaitanya revealed to them that birth after birth, they had been Lord Chaitanya's eternal servants. And so Rupa and Sanatan, before Lord Chaitanya left, gave Lord Chaitanya advice. They actually said, please don't continue on the road to Vrindavan. One reason is because everybody knows you're on the road, and this Nawab Hussain Shah, right now he may be respectful, but he may feel threatened or envious of you, and he would really hurt you if he discovered that two of his best men would be leaving your service, that you're taking us away. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was thinking, I'm not worried. Of course, Lord Chaitanya was not worried, was not scared of anything. I mean, remember, he went to the Jharikhanda forest, and he had the but the tigers, there weren't lions in India, tigers and deer dancing in ecstasy. And all the dangerous animals, they basically respected Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, but then they had another argument. They said, it is not proper to go to Vrindavan. Basically it's like a circus, with so many people. Because Vrindavan is a place where one has to be very, let's say, meditative, rather than just like hundreds or thousands of people and everything like that. It's just, what I've experienced when I would go Vrindavan, my favorite time or times is when I'm just about alone, and I could sit down at Radhakund or someplace like that and chant. And otherwise it's like tour guide time. this happened here. I don't mind doing that sometimes, but generally the most ecstatic, wonderful times is when you could just sit and chant Krishna's holy names and be absorbed in the names of Krishna. So they advised Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, no, don't go now. Go there later. And there won't be such a big deal, and Nawab Hussain Shah won't do anything, and you won't be going there, with so many people. And so later on he went with two servants, a servant and, Ballabha Bhattacharya, and another servant. A few months later he went. So later on, Rupa Goswami, after Lord Chaitanya left, so they didn't want to get Lord Chaitanya in trouble, Rupa Goswami somehow or other was able to give up this world and take sannyas and live as a traveling mendicant. And he distributed his wealth, as Prabhupada describes many times, 50% to the Brahmins and Vaishnavas, 25% to relatives, and 25% for personal emergencies. So personal emergencies, that money was kept with a grocer. I guess that's how they deposited money rather than a bank. And that money was later used by Sanatana Goswami, who couldn't escape. He had previous commitments. And it was used by him to bribe the jailer to get away. So they both traveled, Rupa Goswami and Anupama, not Sanatana, to Prayag, which is known as Allahabad. Actually, Prabhupada had a pharmacy in Prayag. Prayag Pharmacy, I believe it was called. And Lord Chaitanya was returning from Vrindavan at that particular point. He had gone to Vrindavan. I guess it was several months later. So Lord Chaitanya spent 10 days instructing the brothers about the different tattvas. Tattvas means what is Vishnu tattva, Krishna tattva, Bhakti tattva, Jiva tattva, Rasa tattva. Tattva in this particular context would mean the truth, or the essence, or the nature, the eternal nature of these different aspects of Krishna and devotional service and of the material world. There's Maya Tattva, etc., like that. So, at that time, Rupa Goswami had composed this prayer, which we chant all the time as we're offering food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurata Se Namaha. Oh, Lord Chaitanya, you're the most munificent incarnation. You are distributing love of Godhead, Krishna Prema, freely, which no other incarnation has ever distributed before. And so, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to instruct them about these different tattvas. So, there's a lot of information about instruction in the different tattvas. So after these 10 days, Rupa and Anupama wanted to stay with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They accompanied him as far as Benares, which is a place where Mayavadis are, and they wanted to go with him to Puri, but Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, first you go to Vrindavan, then later you can come to Puri to visit me, after you pass through Bengal. So they were obedient to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the two brothers went to Vrindavan and then decided, we want to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri. So they headed towards Puri, and the way they were going to Puri was to actually pass, they went directly to Puri. Later on, Rupa Goswami passed through Bengal on the way back. So, but on the way to Puri, Nupama, the younger brother, who was also the father of Jiva Goswami. And Jiva Goswami was the most erudite scholar of all time, composed the Shat Sandarbhas, beginning with the Tattva Sandarbha, which we're not going to talk about right now. So, Jiva Goswami, he was like the youngest of all the Goswamis of Vrindavan. And he was cared for by Rupa and Sanatana. Goswami, especially Rupa Goswami. So, anyway, so Anupama, the father of Jiva Goswami, departed the world while Rupa Goswami was going to Vrindavan, was going to Jagannath Puri to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And while Rupa Goswami was going to Jagannath Puri to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he thought an ideal way to manifest, to teach others about the rasas and the manifestations of the rasas and the tattvas is through plays, because this is very entertaining. Because many people just can't sit down and read philosophy. As nice as philosophy is, philosophy about Krishna consciousness is very nectarian. But many people learn by some emotional manifestation. It's actually said when you want to memorize something, you connect some emotion to it. If there's no emotion to it, it's going to be very hard to memorize something. Just like you all realize that whenever you had a traumatic experience, something really heavy happens and heavy emotions, you remember it. I remember things from my childhood where there was some heavy emotion connected to it. For example, I'll give you an example. I remember being in a school bus and we learned that Kennedy was assassinated. And I just remember that I can see myself. I remember the bus, how big it was, who was driving. It was a lady driver. And so Rupa Goswami thought, this is a way to inculcate the knowledge of Krishna's pastimes in people's hearts. So he thought, let me write a play about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan and as a king in Dwarka. One play. But on his way to Jagannath Puri, he stopped in a village named Satyabhamapura, which is named after Satyabhama, Krishna's wife. That evening he had a dream in which Satyabhama appeared to him and asked him to write a separate play about her. And so when Rupa Goswami reached Jagannath Puri, he showed Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the outline for his two dramas that he had prepared, which later became known as the Lita Madhava and Vidagdha Madhava. And those two dramas I did a narration on, and there's a music to accompany them and everything like that. And those, the sound files are available on iskondesiretree.com if one wants to hear them. They're very beautiful dramas. You really have to pay attention to understand what's going on, because the style of dramas is different than the styles that we use nowadays. So, of course, in the Vrindavan one, that's the Vidagdha Madhava, Krishna's Madhurya feature, that means sweet feature, was exhibited, whereas the Dwarka ones, there's some Aishvarya, there's also Madhurya there too. So, but to combine them both in one play would be a mixture, an inappropriate mixture of rasas, which is called rasa bas. So Rupa Goswami showed these books to Lord Chaitanya, Ramananda Roy, and other associates, Rupa Damodar Goswami and other associates like that. Rupa Goswami also did not go to the Jagannath temple in Jagannath Puri, because it was considered he had lost his caste, so he humbly stayed with Haridas Thakur. And actually, even one time, he wrote one verse that showed that he understood Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prayer in front of Lord Jagannath during the Rath Yatra, where Lord Chaitanya said, I am the same, you are the same Krishna, I am the same Radharani, I want to enjoy you beneath the Vaitasi tree, or something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but it was showing great mood of separation. And Rupa Goswami understood this, and when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the palm leaf on which Rupa Goswami wrote this verse, Lord Chaitanya slapped him lovingly, how did you understand my internal mood? And Rupa Goswami said, only one who has received your mercy, I can understand he has received your mercy. So he didn't go to the Jagannath temple in Puri. I'll tell an interesting story. One time Prabhupada, when he was in Jagannath Puri, wanted to meet with the Pandas and to try to get his disciples in. So they set up a meeting in a certain place. Prabhupada arrived for the meeting, and the Pandas means like the tour guides, not the pujaris. You know, those who guide people around the temple. That's a Panda. So the Pandas basically stood Prabhupada up. They didn't show up for the meeting. They committed that great offense. And Prabhupada was really angry. And at that point he said, Lord Jagannath will come out of the temple and join us unless they let my disciples, Prabhupada's disciples, not my disciples, into the temple. So, anyway, so Rupa Goswami didn't go in the temple either. He observed the social etiquette along with Haridas Thakur, and Sanatana Goswami didn't go in either. So they stayed with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He stayed for about 10 months. And then he left for Vrindavan again. And he took 12 months to get a year to get to Vrindavan because he was very concerned with his relatives. And he had some wealth left. And he wanted to distribute that to them, the wealth, so that they would have a sense of security. So there were some legalities and everything like that. So he's concerned because when one takes sannyas, it has to be done responsibly. And in ISKCON right now, we actually see if someone takes sannyas, they have to account for the welfare of their previous family, if there was a previous family. And for the rest of the family's life, there has to be some accounting and protection. They can't just take sannyas. Like that's very, very important. So anyway, then he goes to Vrindavan. Rupa Goswami goes to Vrindavan. And one of the first things he does is he installs the deity of Vrinda Devi. Vrinda Devi is the presiding goddess of Vrindavan. And she, of course, is expansion of Radharani, and she arranges all the pastimes for Radha and Krishna and the devotees, and the pastime forest, the different weather in different places like that. So he installs this deity, Vrinda Devi, which is found in this place called Kamyavan, which is Western Braj. And this deity, interesting story which we told this morning, this deity was not able to be moved out of Western Braj, refused to move, even though the deity was not that heavy, when all the other deities were moved out to protect the deities from the attack of the Mughals who had wanted to come and smash all the deities. And that's why many of the deities went to places like Jaipur, Udaipur, Karoli, etc. like that. And they're still there today. And in Vrindavan, in general, you have the Pratibhu deities, the replica deities, which are non-different from the original deities. Some of the original deities are there, like Radha Raman, who is able to be protected, because Radha Raman is very small, self-manifested deity of Gopal Bhatta Goswami that manifested from a Shilaram Shila. So Rupa Goswami was very anxious about carrying out Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. And he was thinking, how am I going to install deities, and build temples, and everything like that? So one day, he was sitting on the banks of the Yamuna, and he was feeling very despondent, and a young boy came to him and asked him, what are you doing, and why you're so disturbed? And Rupa Goswami revealed to him why he was so disturbed. The young boy said, look, go inside this hill. There's the deity of Govinda Dev that was established 5,000 years, not quite 5,000 years, 4,500 or something like that. Actually, a little less than that. But when Krishna's great-grandson, Rajanabha, came, he established some of the original deities there in Vrindavan in the holy places. So the deity was actually buried to prevent the destruction that took place during one of the invasions of the Muslims. And the boy said, every day a cow comes and drops milk on that spot. and the deity is taking its prasadam, or bhoga, at that particular point. So Rupa Goswami didn't really believe it, but he came to that spot, and the next morning you say a cow came, and there's milk all over the place, and all the local villagers came, and they dug in the ground, and they found the deity. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy with that. And even the Mughal Emperor Akbar, who was actually quite liberal, trying to bring all the different religions together, helped construct the temple, and sandstone was donated from Jaipur, and the temple was built like that. Of course, the temple later on, during the early 18th century, was partially torn down by the men of Aurangzeb, who was very upset that the temple was so tall that he could see the ghee lamp from the temple, the upper story of the temple, from his palace in Agra, which is quite some distance away. So, beautiful, beautiful temple if you ever go there. Even what's left is ecstatic like that. So, anyway, so little description about Vidagdha Madhava. We actually described it as the intimate pastimes of Radha Krishna Vrindavan, and Lalita Madhava is the description of Krishna's pastimes and the expansions of the devotees in Vrindavan who are in Dwarka. So, just one final story about Srila Rupa Goswami, and we're going to mention some of his books in a second. Final story, the famous story, Rupa Goswami was doing bhajan in Tero Kadamba, which is near Nandagram, in western Braj. And he wanted to prepare some nice prasadam for his brother. His deity wasn't there, Govinda was not there, because Govinda was some distance away in the city of Vrindavan. So he wanted to prepare a nice preparation, and he was thinking, how am I going to make it? I don't have any ingredients. I want to please my brother. And so a few minutes later, after he'd been thinking like that, a young girl, beautiful young girl, came and offered him milk and sugar and said, you can offer this to your deity. And she basically just disappeared from the scene. Wow. That's amazing. And so Rupa Goswami did this. He boiled the milk down and the sweet condensed kheer, offered it to a deity that he had there. And Sanatan came, and he gave Sanatan Goswami the remnants of the food. And Sanatan Goswami, when he was eating this, he became so ecstatic. He said, wow, this is something special. This is not just ordinary, prasadam was never ordinary, but just ordinary kheer offered to the deities. This is something amazing. Where'd you get the ingredients? And Rupa Goswami described where he got the ingredients, and Sanatan Goswami said, uh-oh, that was Radharani. You cannot take service from Radharani. And he chastised Rupa Goswami, and Rupa Goswami never accepted such gifts again. And you have interesting stories like that about Raghunath Das Goswami, who at one point had Radharani shielding him from the sun, at another point had Krishna protecting him from the tigers that were there around Radhakund. And he also got chastised by Sanatana Goswami, and he was made to build a kutir. So it's very important to understand we don't take service from Krishna or Radharani. We give service to Krishna and Radharani. Of course, Krishna is always anxious to satisfy his devotees, and Radharani wants to please her devotees. But still, our business is to serve, not to be served. Remember that. And let's end with a final description of some of Rupa Goswami's books. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which we talked about before, Nectar of Devotion, we gave an explanation of that. Nujala and Nilamani, which is the postgraduate study of the Nectar of Devotion. There's another book called the Lagu Bhagavatamrita, which is a summary study of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita by Sanatana Goswami, and talks about the nature of Krishna, his incarnations, and the devotees of Krishna. And then we already talked about the Vidagdha Madhava and Lita Madhava, uh, and they were finished in 1524 and 1529 A.D., and how he was instructed, Rupa Goswami was instructed by Satyabhama to make them two different books. There's the Stava Mala, which is a flower garland of prayers, short works, which some of which were published as separate books. And one of my favorite is the Dana Kele Comedy. This is a tax collecting pastimes. It's a one-act play written in 1549, and it narrates Krishna's attempt to collect taxes from the gopis and how the gopis get back to Krishna. And this is a famous story. It occurred around Govardhan. Actually, this is a place, when we take devotees around Govardhan, a place we know where it actually occurred. And actually, the center street going through the village of Govardhan, or the city of Govardhan, is known as the Dan Gati. It means the path of the taxes. So there's many tax pastimes that occurred. So it's a beautiful book by Srila Rupa Goswami. There's the Radhakrishna Ganagastipika, which Rupa Goswami lists the associates of Radhakrishna and describes their characteristics. Mathura Mahatmya, and the glories of Mathura told in this book, and this conversation between Varaha, who is Krishna himself, and Bhumi. Very interesting. There's the Uddhava Sandesh, and so this is actually a more elaborate description of the conversation between Krishna requesting his friend Uddhava to go to Vrindavan to pacify his friends and relatives relations by reminding them of the pastimes of them and what happens in Vrindavan. There's the Hansaduta, Swan Messenger, tells the story of how Lalita sends a messenger in the form of a swan to Krishna and Dwarka. It's an amazing book, amazing book. There's the Krishna Jamna Titi Vidi. It's a manual on worship, worshiping Krishna during Janmashtami, etc., etc., etc. The Nataka Chandrika, which is a book about Gaudiya Vaishnava drama, or how to compose Gaudiya Vaishnava drama. And finally, the Upadeshamrita, which we probably translate as the Nectar of Instruction, which has 11 verses, which we just got finished reading online. Actually, just got finished yesterday reading it online, which you're invited to read or hear. All the narrations, readings that I've done since the beginning of COVID, that's when we started, are all on my YouTube channel, and they're divided into different playlists. You just have to go to the different playlists and look for Nectar of Instruction, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion, Bhagavad Gita, and I believe we're going to be starting to read the Krishna book next. Okay, so that's all we have time for today. There's time for one question. I'll unmute you, allow you to unmute yourselves. Hold on a second. So one question, and if not, we can end, because it's actually the time to end.
Please accept my obeisance, Gurudev.
Okay, so what's up, Gopal?
Can you explain the difference between not taking service from Krishna and being fully dependent on Krishna?
That's actually good. Not taking service from Krishna means not asking him anything. Not asking him anything and knowing that he is always going to take care of us and do what's best for us and have no requests. That's what it means. Because obviously we're all taking service from him. But anyway, obviously we're all taking service from him and his energies, but not requesting anything and not taking more than necessary. As it said in the Upanishad, Ishavashamidam Savramni Kincha Jagajam Jagat Tena Jaktena Bunjara Margudha Kashas Vid Danam. Yes.
So in the
Ultimately,
case of
yeah.
sorry, in the case of Raghunath Das Goswami and Rupa Goswami here, they didn't ask for anything, but Srimati Radharani and Krishna just came of
Yeah.
their own accord to give. So why
That's
did
right.
they get
That's
chastised?
right. But that was directly Krishna, not Krishna acting through his material energy or not acting through another devotee. It's directly Krishna personally, directly Radharani. It's a little bit different.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so now we have to end. Sorry, everybody. It is time. And we'll see everybody hopefully tomorrow night, same time, same station. All glories to his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada.